Hello, Kathy.
Hi, John.
How are you?
I'm good. This is my last session before I take the exam.
Before you take the test?
Yeah, I'm going to be studying all weekend. Nothing left on the table.
Well, hopefully it's a good one, right? So.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
My check just went through for my test, but I haven't gotten anything other
Oh, that's good. I found it's about from the time of the check going through, it's about a week to probably get the notice. So
cool.
Oh, that's interesting because I thought my test confirmation before the check was cash.
before?
Yep, me too.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Next Thursday.
I guess they're hurting for their money, huh? I guess. All right. Let's share the screen here. Boom, boom. Okay, we got property valuation and analysis. Always fun. People tend to struggle on this because it's very term heavy and arcane as far as because it talks about basically appraising properties. Let's get started here. A real property appraiser would generally describe his subjective value as value that is established on an owner's desire and need for a property. Subjective value is particularly known as what?
That would be subjective, would be utility value.
Yeah,
See.
and see.
Correct, utility value. So it is a very important concept. If you learn anything, if you want to remember anything about appraisal and valuing financial analysis of property, is always the concept of usefulness, right? How useful is the property going forward for the buyer is considered utility. That's like utility usefulness. So think about it that way, because that's how they're going to view the value of the property. All the following are causes of economic obsolescence, except what? Economic obsolescence.
B.
E.
Correct. National, local. So what do you think are some national factors of economic obsolescence?
Right, because all of them would be.
Could be.
Like interest rate, maybe?
Yeah, interest rates or inflation, right? Recession. Regional factors could be wildfires, right?
Yep.
Right. Or local factors, right? It could be certain areas are depressed, right? So jobs, right? Jobs in there. An industrial plant is being built close to an affluent residential neighborhood. Houses in such neighborhoods may eventually lose value. This is an example of what?
That would be.
Maybe D again.
Yes, correct. It is D.
Yep.
We kind of use the term economic obsolescence in general for everything, but
yep.
they can call it sometimes environmental, or external obsolescence, or sometimes the other terms they use, especially if it's an environmental nuisance, right? So, an income approach to value is based on the principle of what?
D.
Let's see. I would say income. Well, you're anticipating getting income from a property if you're an investor.
E.
Correct. Anticipation. So we have different ways we do appraisal, and just know the income approach. So we're going to look at the future income that the buyer would generate from buying the property. So it's anticipation in the future. In the real estate process, appraisal process, value is defined as what? What is value defined as?
E.
E.
Correct. Those are all ways to, oh no, sorry, not all. B.
Yep.
So the present worth of rights to the future benefits of the property ownership, right? So that's why it says it's all about the utility value going forward, right? So one of the 5 statements regarding the highest and best use of property is correct. Oh, the highest and best use.
Let's see. Most likely to generate the highest rate of net return. I would say A is true.
A.
A?
A.
Correct. So it's important you understand highest and best use. So if you have a bare land, what is the best property we can put on there that will result in the highest use of utility to whoever uses that property? And that highest and best use can change. Houses built downtown likely now are not the highest and best use they were 100 years ago. It's more likely commercial is a better use for those properties. Sometimes highest and best use changes. Economic obsolescence is a cause of property blank resulting from factors outside the property.
B. Depreciation.
Correct. Depreciation.
Yeah. Yep.
Reproduction cost is the cost of building a structure with one that is the exact duplicate of the existing structure. Reproduction cost may be also called
C. Replication.
C.
You want to agree? C? Correct. Replication cost. Now, it's important to understand when they do a cost appraisal. So now we had income approach, and we're going to get more into this as we go, but you're going to understand the different appraisal types. Income approach, this is cost approach. So we're looking at how much does the building cost to make? It's important to know it's the exact duplicate. What does that mean? If a house is 20 years old and burns down, and insurance has to pay them off with the exact cost of that building, they have to assume 20-year-old drywall. That makes sense? They don't assume current cost of drywall. They assume, what if that drywall was 20 years old? How much would it be worth? Right? So it's literally the exact duplicate, right? So just don't know. It's not like present value of it. It's what it would build now. It's what it would build if we built the same thing, that if it had that age and wear on it, right? So capitalization rate, or cap rate, is the percentage between the net operating income produced by an asset and its capital cost or value. Cap rate is calculated as, I love this question because it tells you what it is and then it asks you to find it for you.
A.
Let's see.
Correct. It is A.
The A, yeah.
So cap rate will be on the test. It is very important in real estate. Capitalization rate is how you do income approach. So, and we'll get into this into the future questions, but how do you value an income producing property? You don't use comps, right? You use the future anticipated income, and then we put that at a rate. So when I value a property, we value it based on what other businesses around it are selling at what cap rates. Similar businesses are selling at what cap rates. And then we assume that cap rate on our property, and then we backdoor it into a value. I don't know if that makes sense. So this is fundamentally different than most other appraisals you see, where we look at comps, that house sold for that, that house sold for that. In real estate and income producing, we don't look at that apartment complex sold for that, and that apartment complex that. We say that apartment complex sold for that cap rate, that apartment complex sold for that cap rate. We are similar. So what if we sold at that cap rate? Then we backdoor the price. If we sold at that cap rate, our price would be $3 million, right? So that's how you come to value. In the income approach to appraisal, depreciation is based on the property's remaining what life?
B, useful.
Yep.
Useful life, correct. The length of time wherein a property may be put to profitable use is known as its what?
C.
D.
C, economic.
Correct. Economic life. That is correct. In general, value is regarded as what? What is value?
D.
I would
D.
say C, reasonable price of return.
Is actually D, all of them.
Oh,
So value is regarded as any monetary and material worth in the world of commerce, the amount of goods service to be delivered for an appropriate equivalent of something else, or a realistic price of return. Those are all definitions we use for value. So, Barbara's neighborhood is in a phase of decline. She upgraded her home before she had it listed. Her home in all likelihood would not.
C.
Yeah.
They say D.
E. Huh.
Yeah, all of the above.
So
Yeah.
it would likely not be sold if she wanted to maintain price because the market's declining, right? So, examples of economic obsolescence would be what?
D.
D.
D, all of the above.
A house with no hookup for a washer and dryer would be a good example of what?
B.
B.
B, yep, agree.
Right. Functional obsolescence. Good job. You guys are way on top of this. When appraising single-family residences, the blank approach will be utilized to validate the value received with sales comparison and capitalization approaches.
A.
A.
Correct. The cost.
Yeah.
So when we appraise, when you hire an appraiser to appraise a single-family home, why do they use the cost approach as well as the sales comparison approach?
Because value. I mean, if other people are valuing houses in that neighborhood higher, then that adds to the value, even if the house isn't necessarily worth it.
So, well, you could say like, you buy a house in San Francisco, you could rebuild that home for, 700,000, but it's worth 2 million, right?
Right.
So why would someone be interested in knowing the cost of that? The cost. Anyone else? So we have a thing called homeowner's insurance, or more appropriately, people call it fire insurance now. So that's what they're all fires. So remember, the fire insurance company is worried about, the insurance company is worried about what? The cost of it.
Like the cost to rebuild.
The cost to rebuild, right? They're not worried about the value of it. They're worried about the cost to rebuild because that's what they're on the hook for, right? So whenever you see an appraisal for a single family residence, you always see a cost appraisal on there so that the insurer can see that cost and price the insurance appropriately, right? So, Anthony owns a house in a neighborhood where houses currently sell for around $200,000. He bought his neighbor's house, then tears down both his neighbor's house and his own, and he built an exceedingly big house that took up both lots, which cost him around $450,000. The value of his newly built house will basically not increase due to the principle of
Regression B.
Correct. So if you want to make a stupid move in real estate, build the biggest home in the neighborhood. Bad idea. Do not do that. Now, you can make money if you take a little home, if you're the littlest home to put together and make it more look like a bigger home, then you'll make money on that. Do not make the biggest home. A half bath that is located on the main floor of a house increases the blank of the house.
I would say both A and D. C.
C, correct. Market data approach is a method used in appraising a property which evaluates recently sold blank properties to determine the subject property's value.
C, comparable.
Comparable properties, yes. Basically, market value is the blank wherein items can be sold in the open market.
All of the above, D.
Yep.
All the above.
D.
Yeah.
I want to point out one thing that that you might see on the test, open market is a concept where there's a willing buyer and a willing seller, right? That's important in appraisal because there's oftentimes a sell happens where those conditions aren't met, and those comparable sales that are not, they would not likely be used in appraisal because that condition didn't occur. That would be an example like foreclosure sales, short sales, a probate, right? Appraisers don't like to use those because it wasn't a willing seller, right? On those situations, right? The seller is forced to sell, right? And so you're not likely to create a good open market value for your property, right? For the property. So just note that when you talk about an open market, that they're talking about willing buyer, willing seller, unfettered. There's no one's being forced to sell, right? So based on the procession of a willing buyer and willing seller in appraisal practice, market value is the what? What is market value?
Let's see.
C.
Yes, I agree with everybody. C.
Let's see. Correct. A building whose actual age is 40 years old yet well maintained may sell for as much as the others nearby at 20-year-old buildings. Such buildings said to have an effective age of
C.
20 years. Correct. I love, Leanne, that you're coming from the outdoors to our I think you're the first outdoors participant we've had in a while. So, oh, you're muted. So,
I'm at my kids' baseball game, so I'm going to stay muted.
awesome. Income or capitalization approach is a valuation method used to determine specifically the value of what?
C.
C.
Correct. Income producing properties. I think you guys had this one before. The principle of blank is an appraisal principle stating that no reasonable person will pay for a property priced at, for example, $1 million, while there's another property equally desirable and available at half the price.
C. Substitution.
C.
Right. The principle of substitution. Functional obsolescence can be classified as either what? How do we classify functional obsolescence?
A.
I would say
Correct. Curable or incurable. That house looks pretty incurable. So foundation's messed up. That's pretty. And it basically says when the cost to rehab the property is more than the property is worth, it becomes incurable at that point. Right?
When the price of lumber was so high, though, I saw a house sell for a pretty high price, looked like that, and they stripped it down and kept the frame so they wouldn't have to buy lumber, and then just built a new house.
So exactly. So functional obsolescence, it made it incurable before, but then lumber prices go up. Now it's curable because it's cheaper to keep the wood than buy new wood, right? So yeah. The most complex feature of the market data report is resolving the proper adjustments between the subject property and the comparable. All the following statements are correct regarding such adjustments except. I'm going to try this.
I think A.
A.
A, we have an A.
Yeah, I'm thinking A.
let's see, except that this is an exception. So let's see.
It is D, none of the above. So.
None of the above.
Adjustments are needed when comparing two parties because even though properties like two properties are seldom alike in every way, which is true. The comparable property site is adjusted to give a better idea of the subject property value. That is true. When subject property and comparable property are in fact alike, the comparable property's basic sales price will give some idea of the subject property value, but the adjusted sale price will give a better idea of value. That is true as well. Let me show you. This is why it's such a good test prep. I will show you real life examples. So hold on one second. I'm going to share another screen here. And if you look at this, can you see the appraisal report?
Yep.
Okay. So this is an example of an actual appraisal. Actually, this is for the refi of my house. You're going to see the refi of my house. Don't look at the address. I want to show you a few things. So this is an example of the market data approach. So you see my house, and it has the site. It's built across. I see it says view. I have a view. I across from a park, so my view is of a park. I have 9 total rooms, 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, 26 square feet, functional utility average, and it's at least puts all my features in there. And then it finds comparable homes. There's one on Eastbrook. But you see, this home has a bigger lot than mine. See that? 5,000 square foot bigger lot than me. So what is it? What does this appraiser do? He reduces the value of this house. So this is a sold house. They said similar to me. Why does he reduce the value? Because he's wanting to change that comp to look like my house. So he's saying, this house has a lot that's too big. So I'm going to take value away from it so it more looks like my house, right? Makes sense? And he went down here and he says, look, I have a view of a park. They have a view, there's houses across the street. So they have a worse view, right, than I do. So I'm going to make it look like this house. So I'm going to pretend there's a park on the other side. So I'm going to add $5,000 to the value of the house, right, to make it look like mine. And so on and so forth. Then the condition, mine is newer than theirs. So he adds $10,000 because I have newer construction than he does, right? This is only 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. I'm 5 bedrooms, so he adds 5,000 to add a bedroom in. My house is 2,600 square feet. They're 2,300 square feet. So he's adding 3,000 square feet onto this house. So it's adding $18,000 onto it. They have a fireplace. I don't. He's taking off money because that has a fireplace and needs to make it look like my house. And then total, all the adjustments say, well, this house sold at 504, but after he adjusted it to make it look my house, he has to add 31,700 to the value to make it look like my house. And so that says my house should be worth $535,700. And you see that he does that for 3 different properties. See that? So he does that for one property, another property. And it's between 537, 514, 543. And then if I go down, he says, well, because of those, I believe the value is $535,000. And then you also see, as I told you, they do a cost approach because for insurance reasons, then they put a cost value next to it, right? So this is an example of an appraisal, right? So this is an example of market data approach. So there's going to be a subtle difference between market data approach and sales comparison approach. Although a lot of people confuse those, this is market data approach. That means we're going to take market data and we're going to make adjustments to everything, right? When we do sales comparison approach, we don't quite do it like that. It's more subjective. We're going to say, this looks like this house. This looks like this house. This is kind of around the value, right? So that's the difference between, so agents tend to do sales comparison. Appraisers do market data. It's just a more in-depth way to do appraisal, right? Clear as mud?
Yep.
All right. The following statements regarding the law of supply and demand are all correct, except what? What is supply and demand? High school, economics, California, you should know this.
Okay, the following statements regarding the law of supply and demand are all correct. When supply of a product is up, price goes down. That is correct. When demand.
Anyone else? What do you say?
D.
D?
Yeah, D.
Correct is D, because when the demand for a product is up, the price does not go down, it goes up. Like lumber. Demand greatly affects the purchasing power of consumers. And an illustration of this would be what?
C.
Correct. And this is important actually when we've had the run up of home prices, right? But actually for a lot of that has been mitigated by low rates, right? So even though we've had prices go up dramatically, when rates compensated for that, it actually didn't affect buyers' purchasing power so much. So that's why we saw so many buyers come to the market, because their purchasing power was the same, even though prices were going up, right? So functional obsolescence is a loss in property value because of age or poor design of existing features of the property. Example of this would be what?
D.
Yep. D.
Correct. A one-car garage in a 5-bedroom house would suck. Actually, I'll tell you a little story. I had this person, they had a 3-car garage in Elk Grove, beautiful neighborhood. They had a 3,800 square foot home, but they turned it into a nursing kind of elderly care home. And they converted the 3-car garage into 3 additional bedrooms.
Oh, wow.
And it added about 600 square feet to the home. So it made it more like a 4,500 square foot home, but no garages.
So their neighbors hated them.
Basically. And she ended up contacting me because she fired her previous realtor and said, they can't sell the home. I have a 4,500 square foot home in this neighborhood and it won't price, they can't sell it. And I tried to tell her, I didn't tell her functional obsolescence, but I said, you have functional obsolescence. You have no garages. No one is going to buy a 4,500 square foot home with 8 bedrooms with no garage. And so she's like, well, what should I do? And I said, take out the rooms from the garage and return the home to normal, and you will maximize your value. She's like, but then I have to drop the price like $100,000. I said, because that is the max value of your home. Actually, the value of your home is less than that right now. If I actually just had to recommend a sale home, I'd probably have to drop it $200,000 to get someone to buy it. And they would likely come in and just tear off the garage. Right? So that is the idea of functional obsolescence. The blank approach would be the only significant method to user if the appraiser is to determine the value of a church and its existing facilities.
No, that would be none of the above.
None of the above?
B.
B, income?
B. So that means, well, yeah.
I'm gonna say A. It's A.
So Leanne Mosher's at, Leanne, you're at a ball field, right? A park. Okay. How would we value a park? Is it how many playgrounds it has? How many ball fields it has?
Land.
How do we price it?
Yeah, these are hard.
It would be a higher price, wouldn't it?
Would we go to look at other parks and say, well, that park's a little smaller and it doesn't have a ball field, but it has 2 play facilities and it has a skate park.
Its location.
Isn't there like another approach for specialty proproperties like this?
There is only one approach for specialty property.
Yeah, and government buildings. And
Yeah. So what anyone know? It's one of these?
Is it A?
It's A.
Yeah.
No, it's C.
D.
The cost approach. So some things are so unique, we're like, we don't know. We just don't know, right? And so our appraisal value is what it would cost to build that. So if they were going to value a park, in this case a church, but they're going to do a park, they're going to say, if we had to till the land and put in the grass and the sidewalks and the ball fields, how much would it cost? And that would be the value of the property, right? So,
because you know what kind of materials are going into that particular building.
and actually, they were redoing in Paris, I think it was Notre Dame, the church, and it caught on fire, right? And they called in world-renowned appraisers because they had to do a cost approach. How do you cost approach Michelangelo's painting on the roof, right? Like, there's a value to it. So how do you value that, right? And so they had to bring in people that estimate the value because the insurance company was going to have to pay them off, right?
Well, and there was another problem with that too, because they couldn't build it exact
Mhm.
because there's not big enough lumber anywhere in the world to build it exactly the way it was before.
Yeah, because we cut all the trees down. Exactly. See, so some things get complicated. When it gets really complicated, we go to cost approach, right? The capitalization method used for calculating the approximate value of an income producing property based on the property's gross rental income is called what?
Gross rent multiplier, D.
Correct. Gross
D.
multiplier. So gross rent multiplier will be on the test likely. It is an older method, but it uses the gross income instead of the net income. And some owners got tricky with that, meaning they would make the gross income look really good, but it had high expenses, right? And so they would try to trick owners that way. So most people have gone to cap rate now as a way to calculate with net income. Blank is an appraisal phrase describing the decline in the building's physical condition to the lack of normal maintenance.
I'm going to say B, deferred.
Correct, deferred maintenance. We like that too.
Oh, God.
No, we don't say your house, it sucks. We say your house has deferred maintenance.
There's a few of those there.
Exactly. You say, oh, this house is wonderful. You just have a little bit of deferred maintenance, right? Investor is looking to buy a rental property and has found two different properties that interest him. One, this property would produce 40,000 annually, the other would produce 50,000. An investor would undoubtedly be willing to pay more for a property that would produce more. Yes, more income. Yes, more. The following are forces that affect the value of real estate except
D.
I would say D, none of the above, because they all would.
How do political factors affect?
I mean, those kind of play hand in hand with economic factors. So
Yeah, they kind of do, right? Yeah, political factors could be, like
Propositions
instability.
can affect them.
Yeah, people be afraid to sell, right? Like less economic driving down prices because you're worried about where the world's going, and political factors could be rent control. We have a Democratic legislature. We're going to have higher taxes and higher property taxes, right? You can't deduct your property taxes anymore, right? So it could affect value from political factors.
Or in Berlin, where they decided to, or was it Berlin? I think it's Berlin, where they decided to take back 200 homes from the biggest investors' property.
Yeah. So like, what if the government starts reaching in, right? So there was a big old to do in Sacramento because an investor owned 138 houses. He actually bought a whole development. Guy was developing and just bought the whole thing and rented out all the properties, rented them out. And he owned them for like 20 years and he wanted to sell them all. He was kicking every tenant out and was going to sell. And they got on the news and the government intervened.
Wow.
The government intervened, right? And said, no, you can sell them, but you have to sell them with the tenants in there and honor the lease, right? They just made a new rule, like who knew, right? So, all right. What about social factors?
That's what I was going to ask you.
What's the social factor that could affect value?
I mean, example is in Minnesota, protesting in the neighborhoods near where George Floyd happened to the area. Like, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's impacted the value of the real estate in that area.
Yeah. At George Floyd, I mean, they had a riot. They did it in downtown Sacramento.
Yep.
Looted a bunch of commercial buildings. Yeah. And I can tell you those commercial buildings have now less value. If every time there's a social unrest, you're doing a destructive protest in downtown Sacramento, it's going to hurt downtown Sacramento properties, right? Because people are like, I'm not doing that, right? So it could be social factors as well. So it's weird how things affect real estate, right? So
I've been seeing that in Old Sacramento too. More houses going up in Old Sac, or apartments, lofts going up in Old Sac, and people don't want them because of the violence right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like shootings and stuff, right? Yeah, it could be other social factors. It could be homelessness, right? There's a house one of my agents trying to sell, $700,000, beautiful home downtown Sacramento. But the city has allowed like a homeless tent. So there's a vacant lot next to it, and there's a bunch of homeless living in it, right? And literally, you can't sell the house. The house is worth it. Comps out everything. Everything comps out great. It's because there's homeless living next door. Social factor. ROI calculates the gain or loss produced on investment. relation to the amount of money invested. ROI stands for?
A.
On investment. A.
That is important. Yesterday, I taught a wealth building class. Me and another millionaire real estate agent like myself we're teaching a 5-part series on wealth building to agents. That will be on our YouTube channel soon, which will be Kitty B. Metrics if you want to check it out. We're going to go through our 5 series. That'll be fun. A loss of property value due to a natural disaster causes what?
That would be functional.
Notice economic because it's outside the property.
Action, I should have gone with that.
When inflation is high, and the commonly would normally experience what? Hey, we may have this. Inflation's pretty high right now. If you go to the grocery store, you know inflation's high because your food bill is getting big, right? So,
A.
A.
Oh, we got an A. Why? So, Mr. Beck, why would housing prices increase coupled by interest rate increases?
The price increases because of inflation because the dollar doesn't go as far. And then
right. So it's not valuable, so you have to pay more to get the same value, right? So
and then interest rates increase because the Fed is trying to bring inflation down and buying less bonds. So interest rates go up.
Yeah, their combat is to slow down the economy, right? Yeah. So they're going to push interest rates up, right? So
they recently talked about that in the beat.
Yeah, there's inflation now, and the Fed has said they believe it is temporary. It is in the short term only. As markets and as suppliers stabilize, they believe it's mostly just unstable market and logistics, right? So we'll see, I guess, right? But really what they're saying is no way in hell as I'm going to stop flooding the market with money and have a recession on my hands and have the government blame us, right? So that's what they're really saying. Blank are interchangeable terms describing the objective appraisal process that requires interpretation of data involving the methods and results from the appraisal approaches to value used to arrive at a single determination of value. Whew, that was a lot of words. What the heck does that mean?
I would say it's reconciliation and computation.
Ooh, I'm thinking A.
A.
Yeah.
A.
Reconciliation and correlation.
Part of the reconciliation. Yeah.
So that process where I showed you where he took 5,000 here off and took that's known as reconciliation and correlation, that process.
Right, correlation, collecting.
An investor would like to purchase a rental property that has an NOI of 60,000. The investor would like to have a cap rate of 10%. The rental property worth what? So this is a good example of how investors invest. If I want to buy a property, I generally want a certain amount of return. So when I invest rentals, I want between a 10 and 12% return. And because of that, I take that return and then I price the property of that's how much I will offer, and that's what I'll offer, right? So the same thing.
600,000, A.
Correct.
A, 600,000.
Because economic obsolescence is caused by external factors, it is generally what?
I would say
Incurable.
Incurable. Yes, you can't stop that flood. Just sort of happens, right? So, an income approach is the process of appraising income-producing properties. It relates to the present worth of what benefits that can be expected from the income.
C.
Future.
Future, yes, we are always concerned about the future.
That goes with the anticipation.
It's always about the future. In appraising commercial property, the appraiser would usually base his or her valuation on the blank that the commercial property is making.
Income.
Correct. The property has a net operating income of $125,000 and recently sold for $1.5555 million. Capitalization rate of this property is. Now there's no math on the test anymore.
Oh, really good.
Yeah, they've eliminated math from the test.
Are you serious?
Really?
Oh my God.
They eliminated math from the test because too many people complained about the math. So
Fantastic.
Oh my God.
But they did do something else to compensate for that.
What did they do?
They eliminated all questions that have a all the above or none of the above. There are no all the above or none of the above questions anymore.
Those were so easy.
I know, they eliminated all of them. And in fact, they try to design questions that are scenarios with information irrelevant to the answer to confuse people.
Right.
Wonderful. I take mine tomorrow.
Next
So what I
Thursday.
see this is, it's very important that you read the whole question, because they'll design the question to throw you off. And if you only read, oh, I know the answer, you're likely choosing the wrong answer if you don't read the whole thing, right?
Right. So take your time on some of the bigger ones.
So just for you know this, remember, cap rate equals net operating income divided by sold. So in this case, you would take 125,000 divided by 155, and you would come out to
8%.
Right.
Appraiser Edmund is valuing a vacant lot that he can list for sale. He's estimating its value through comparing it with recently sold vacant lots in the area with similar features. Appraiser Edmund is employing the blank approach.
Sales comparison.
Sales comparison approach. Very good. The blank approach is based on the formula net operating income divided by capitalization equals value.
Capitalization.
B.
Yeah. B.
No, it's C. It's known as income or the capitalization approach.
I was going to change my mind on that.
Income or capitalization approach. They're both the same.
Yep.
Income's the old school way. Capitalization. Economic life is described as a period in which improvements to a property contribute to its values. Economic life when a property is generally less than its
Physical life.
A.
physical life. Correct. Physical life. That is correct. There are, this is my favorite question. I love this question. There are two properties situated in the same location. Both have comparable size and both are under long-term leases. One is leased to a FGH hardware store and the other is under a government post office. As directly related to risk, blank would have a lower cap rate and blank would have a higher cap rate. This is a good example of a DRE question.
B.
B.
B?
I'm going to say maybe, let's see.
Oh, no, it's opposite.
Is it opposite? Is it A?
Yeah, I think it's opposite because the hardware store would need more, like, you would need more growing room there because they could hit like a bad sales, where the government post office could be more steady because it's, it's something we all have to
So
use.
who would have a lower cap rate and who would have a higher cap rate?
Good question.
Would the hardware store have a lower cap rate or a higher cap rate?
Think the hardware store would have lower.
Well, because
what is a cap rate? Let's start back. What is a cap rate?
Capitalization rate.
Yeah, what is it?
Oh,
why do we calculate it? Why is it important? What does it tell us?
It tells us what they're making, what they want to make on
hardware would have a higher cap because it's an income generating building.
No, that's not true. All right, let's back this up. What is a capitalization rate? This will help you. You got to understand this. If I take how much money it makes me and I divide it by what I'm paying for it, what am I getting? My rate of return.
Yep.
Right.
Just like if you did a bank account, a savings account at a bank, I put money in the savings account, I get a very small interest rate back, right? Right? But I'm still getting a return. Right? That return is a percentage, right? They tell you it's 0.0012%, right? But I am getting a return. So capitalization rate is used because how do I compare different buildings? How do I compare a gas station to an apartment complex to a restaurant, right? How do I compare those things? So how do we compare it? We say, well, if it makes this much money and I divide it by how much I'm going to pay for it, it's going to give me my rate of return or my cap rate. That means if I invest this much money, I'm going to get this much return annually. So I'm going to put in $1 million, I'm going to get 6% return annually on this investment, right? So we understand cap rate is the amount of return I'm going to get annually on the property, right?
Yep.
So now we're looking at this question as it relates to risk. So this is understanding how income and capitalization approach happens when you do appraisal. So in this case, I'm an investor. What kind of return will I want to see? Or I say I'm a seller of these properties. I own both these. I'm going to sell both buildings. I own both buildings. I'm going to sell them. I meet with a commercial agent and I say, hey, value these properties. And the commercial agent says, hey, I think to sell the hardware store building, even though they're the same, we're going to have to give it a higher cap rate. Why?
Well, my thought, and it could be wrong, is that the income of the hardware store might be more likely to fluctuate, whereas the government, the post office may be able to pay the same amount of rent every month.
Correct. So to an extent, yeah. So it's about risk, remember?
Yeah.
So I would have to sell the hardware store at a higher cap rate. That means the potential buyer is going to make more money off that investment, right? They're going to get a better return, right, on their money.
Yep.
But if I make it if I get a better return, what does that mean? It means I got to lower the price, right? How do I make a property that's the same? How do I make it a better, more attractive to a seller? To a buyer? I got to lower its price, right? Whereas you're right, the government one is I could price it at a higher price and give the buyer a lower return because it's super safe. The government's going to pay its bills no matter what, right? Where if Home Depot moved in next door, FHG hardware store is screwed, and now I'm out of a tenant and I have a building that I can't lease, right? That make sense? So understand risk. So for example, let me put it in another way. If you have an apartment complex and you're near a university, in our case, in Sacramento State University in Sacramento, you have an apartment complex near there. You can probably, right now, you could probably sell those apartment complexes at a very low return rate for the buyer. You could probably sell that at 4% cap rate right now. That means the buyer is going to spend millions of dollars buying that, is only going to get a 4% return. Why? Because it's Sac State. You're going to have students there all the time, super safe. You're going to have no vacancy. Your vacancy rate is going to be super little. You're going to always have demand, right? Then I go to a bad neighborhood, Oak Park or El Paso Heights, and I have an apartment complex. Those in Sacramento right now are going to sell at like 8% cap rate, literally double the return. Literally, if I go take my money, instead of going near Sac State, I invest it over here, but I can get an 8% return. That's awesome, but it's more risky. I'm in a socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. I'm going to have more evictions. Tenants more likely to damage the property, right? Police come in all the time to the neighborhood, hard to rent, right? So all those things make it more difficult, more risky, but it depends on what I'm looking for as a buyer, right? So that's how you got to understand cap rates. Cap rates are a way to attract a buyer, but the only way you increase the cap rate is you drop the price. But it's really about comparable risk. So it's important you understand that, because these are questions that are going to be on the test. And so it's important to understand that concept, right? So, okay. Whew.
So you said there's not going to be any all of the above or none of the above?
Correct.
Got it.
Zero
of that. Got it.
And the math, you said.
So yeah, they did you help, no math.
Wow.
But they also took out the low-hanging fruit, like the all the above, none of the above. Right? So,
wow.
So that's real. So the test is harder since I've taken it. There was math when I took it, but I think it's harder now because they made the questions more complicated. What they designed, they're really designing the questions to make sure you understand it. That's what they really want to do. They want to make sure you understand the concepts. The market data approach is an appraisal process that is best used for finding the value of houses. The items of appearance in the property approach is what?
D.
E.
Yes, the entire property. That is important.
Yeah, not just a part.
Cortez and Danielle live adjacent to each other. Their houses were built by EFG contractors in 1999, having the same square footage and the same price of $100,000. Currently, Cortez's house is worth less than Danielle's. This will probably be due to
C.
I would say C. Yeah.
They should put discrimination on there. Cortez. Economists state that there are four necessary elements of value. They are as follows. This will be on the test. I guarantee it.
Let's see. B.
Oh, D. D.
Oh no, wait. Yeah, C. Demand. No, demand. Yeah, D.
D.
I
Demand. Utility. So how much people want it? How useful is it? How hard is it to find? And is it easy to transfer from one to another, right?
Demand, utility.
That's why.
And trend.
That's why real estate is seen as an illiquid asset because it's hard to transfer. It's not easy to just go cash it in, right? So,
if you need a mnemonic device, it's stud.
Stud? Yeah. What'd you say?
It's also dust.
Yeah, I use dust. To be honest.
Oh, dust. Okay.
Dust.
Stud also works.
Yes, I've heard stud. I like dust because it's more like land, you know. Yeah. So, well, I guess stud could be like. You know, I like dust because you think of value with like land, right? So, the replacement cost is the cost to replace an improvement with another improvement having the same.
B, utility.
Utility. Thank you. You guys are learning. I like that. A blank approach to appraisal involves the following steps. The appraiser should establish the current cost of constructing the existing facility. The appraiser should approximately calculate the depreciation the property went through since it was first constructed. This depreciation is then subtracted from the construction cost of the building. The appraiser should add back the current value of the lot to arrive at the value estimate. Gosh, darn it, that sounded complicated. What the heck appraisal approach is that?
Cost.
Cost.
Correct. And it's important to understand, remember I told you they have to factor in 20-year-old drywall, right? So that how they do that is they say, well, if we built this right now, it would have cost this. And if I assumed it to, the house depreciated in usefulness over 20 years, what would it be worth then? So I take how much would it decline in value and usefulness, and then that's how, and then they add in the lot value. That's how they get to the cost of the home at 20 years old, so to speak. Right? Plottage is an appraising term that's also called blank, which is the increase in value of utility resulting from combining two or more adjoining lots into one bigger lot.
B.
Correct assemblage. Very good, very good. In real property, amenities are tangible and intangible benefits that are attributed to a property, particularly those that increase the satisfaction of agreeable living. Tangible amenities could include the following except
let's see, I would say C. Pleasant.
C.
Yeah, because you can't
touch a view.
It's not tangible. You can't touch it, right? So,
and it's subjective too.
Well, it does have value. So on my appraisal, they gave me $5,000 for a view of the park instead of viewing other houses. View a park. Wow, that's worth $5,000, right? So it does. So intangible amenity benefits do have value. So one of the following is not a method to analyze depreciation. Not a method.
B.
I'm gonna say that's a hard one.
I'll just it is D. So all three are, there are three ways to calculate depreciation. One is a straight line or age life method, which is the most common used. So you'll see this especially on single family rentals. The cost to cure or observe condition method, which means how much is it going to cost to bring it back to normal. The sinking fund method is where we just assume an amount every year that it would cost to rehab the building up to current standards. I don't think you just need to kind of know the methods. I don't know if they'll all be on there, but you might hear one or the other on the test. Right? So, one of the following is not a method in estimating construction costs. So now we have the cost approach, right? We know in the cost approach we need to worry about depreciation, which we talked about 3 methods. But we also got to estimate the cost of building it, right? So how do we do that?
I would say
it's D.
It's D?
A and B are definitely.
All 3 of A, B, C all exist, so it's D.
Correct. So you need to know those 3 ways. So there's 3 ways to depreciate, calculate depreciation. There's 3 ways to estimate costs that appraiser use, which is the square foot, cubic foot method. So you'll see this a lot in flippers who try to teach you how to flip homes and say, rehab would be $25 a square foot, or we're going to build a house at $150 a square foot, right? And then there's unit in place method, which is saying, to build this house, we'll need 2 dormers and 53 windows and 43 trusses and things like that. And then there's quantity survey method, which is the most tedious and boring, but it's going to be, we need 569 million nails. We'll need 30 pounds of concrete, like that, right? So,
oh my gosh.
An amenity type property is best evaluated by blank data approach or sales comparison approach.
A.
No, black market. You're wrong. Sorry. A real estate investment has a purchase price of $224,000. The gross rent multiplier of 9% can be attained with the gross annual rental income of blank. There's no math now, so unfortunately, you won't see this type of question on the test. But gross rent multiplier is what? The rate equals the income over the purchase price. So in this case, you would have to divide 224
by 9%. Calculator be A or B?
What's that? Yeah, it is A.
Yeah. I said without a calculator, it'd either be A or B.
Oh, good job. Oh, smart. I like that. Yeah. Leanne don't need a calculator. She's got a brain. Shoot. So it's good.
It doesn't work that good in math.
A unit in place method calculates the cost of single units installed in a structure. Such component parts of erecting a building would include the following.
Well, you mentioned earlier, trusses and.
Yeah. So
D.
Right. So a lot of times you'll see builders who build developments, single family home developments, subdivisions, estimate cost this way, right? Because they know I got 50 lots. It's going to be this many windows, they estimate this way as a way to estimate construction costs over a large project, right? So,
yeah, all the parts, how much of each component.
Yeah. A statistical table that may be used to evaluate the value of a depth of a lot is known as added depth to a lot. So we're going to add depth to the lot. What do you call it?
A depth.
A.
DEPTH. Yeah.
It's the depth table.
One so obviously not right.
I have actually never seen a depth table. So you have to Google it. Blank properties benefit more from corner lots because of easy access and exposure.
All of the above.
All the above. Good job.
Yeah.
A loan officer ordered an appraisal report on behalf of his client, the borrower. The appraiser can discuss the appraisal report with who?
The person who ordered it.
Yeah.
So mortgage loan officer?
Mortgage loan officer.
You sure?
I mean, well, we could.
But you ordered on behalf of the borrower.
Yeah. Well, the loan officer ordered it, and then they might share it with them. But I would.
What do you say?
I say B.
Yeah.
B?
I agree with D.
Anyone else?
B.
I still think it's the person who ordered.
Or D, the lender.
I think B. Maybe.
You see? Oh, you can see everybody. Everybody can see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think all are going to need to eventually know, but the person who ordered it would get the first.
No, correct. Mr. Beck, it is the lender. I'm not going to go, well, why is it the lender? Anyone know?
Because they need to see it to approve the loan to make sure that the house has value to loan that money.
Right.
So how does the mortgage loan officer get paid?
Because they have to determine loan to value.
No, the mortgage loan officer gets paid if the loan closes.
Right.
If the loan doesn't close, they're not going to pay, right? Does the client borrower want the house? Yeah, they're trying to buy the house, right? So if it has a low appraisal,
so the buyer,
they got to come up with more cash to buy it, right? So they don't want that. Does the realtor want the house to close? Yeah, the realtor doesn't get paid. So but who's trying to protect the value of their investment?
Their investment, the lender. Yep.
The lender, right? So there's a thing that was called here's it. The Dodd-Frank Act, which, if you know, after the recession happened, Congress was like, everyone messed up. What happened? We're going to fix it all. And they passed the Dodd-Frank Act, and it passed, and it was part of the provision was to prevent appraisal fraud. And they say part of the reason we had all these bad loans was because the mortgage loan officer and the appraiser and the buyer were like chummy with the appraiser and like wink, wink, let's get this value done, right? And I'll order more appraisals from you, wink, wink, right? You know. So they passed a law that says only the lender can talk with the appraiser because they're the ones that are actually trying to protect their collateral in the process, right? So, and everyone else would have influence on there that is detrimental to the lenders protecting the collateral, right? So, blank method involves a detailed estimate of labor and materials to construct each component of the building. It is very accurate but very time consuming.
That would be B, quantity survey.
Quantity survey. So this is the most detailed. You rarely see this. You rarely see this. The restoration of a property to suitable condition without significantly changing the plan, form, or architectural style is called what?
Let's see.
Rehabbing.
B, yeah, rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation, correct. So there's a difference between rehabbing and remodeling. Rehabbing is you're keeping the house the way it is, just upgrading it. Remodeling is you're changing it, architectural style. Appreciation in real estate is an increase in value of a property that may be due to factors such as.
I would say all of the above.
All of the above, that is correct. Accrued depreciation is the amount of depreciation. Accrued depreciation is the amount of depreciation on a property declared to the present. There are two general classifications of accrued depreciation. They are what?
Curable and incurable, A.
Correct. So we're talking about depreciation on property. What would be an example of an incurable depreciation?
It would be something like the building is just in, maybe like the condos in Florida, maybe.
Yeah, the condos in Florida, good idea, right? We didn't realize the seawater makes things go bad quicker, and they collapse, right? That's incurable. But for example, you could have it more unique or it could be more subtle. For example, you could have an office building that was built with concrete walls, right? And now, while it was great design and they have Cat 5 cabling wire now, but most people want to use Wi-Fi, but concrete walls don't make Wi-Fi harder, right? So installing it may be more difficult or harder to provide. So that's an incurable thing, right? You can't really cure that, right? So.
Would like external factors also be taken into that, like zoning changes or like an industrial factory moving next door?
Yeah. So a depreciation could happen to things that are near it, right? Yeah, like this factory was all around other factories, but that changed over time, and now it's all residential houses, right? So now you have more likely of complaints and traffic and difficulties with it, right? So it's going to be interesting. Actually, are you guys in Sacramento here? No. I know Kathy is, but
yep, I'm in Sac.
There's a place in Rancho called Anatolia. I don't know if you know, I've never been out there. But keep going out. The hit walk, keep going out there, off 50. And you hit this neighborhood out there. And they also built a new Lennard property out there. It was Carrington Ridge or something like that. And they built a bunch of new homes up there too. So there's like 2 properties. Now they're building all. But right in the middle, right next to one of those and right near it is a hide tanning factory. Literally, they take cow hides and they tan them for leather. They make leather. And I don't know if you ever smelled the tanning process.
Oh,
It's not a good smell. It's actually a very bad smell. And in the summer months, when they're doing this, man, it smells.
oh.
So that is an example where they were in the middle of nowhere before, right? And it wasn't an issue. But now there's depreciation. People are going to be less likely to buy it because they're going to get constant complaints and may have the threat of being shut down, right? Because of that, right? So, cul-de-sac. What does that mean? It's a French word. What does cul-de-sac mean?
Let's see. I would say that means
Yeah, D.
It's D. It means all.
Yeah, because it's all of the above. I mean, in a cul-de-sac, that's the end of it. You can't. Right. Okay.
Oh, you have to head out for a sales appointment? You're going to go list a home?
Let's see.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, thanks for being on. We appreciate it. So,
thank you.
And a real estate, a fund that is set aside for property income for payment of replacement is known as what?
Sinking fund, C.
Correct, sinking fund, very good. A narrative report is an appraisal report that is comprehensive, that is a comprehensive valuation of the subject property in its areas, includes all the following except.
D.
Yes, it doesn't include the credit report of the former property.
Doesn't have anything to do with it.
Exactly. A 4,000 square foot house of quality construction is showing a cost of $83.50 per square foot. Its construction cost would simply be, oh man, that is a cheap cost. They do not live in California. So
Let's see.
that would be 8 times 4 is 32. So it's got to be D.
Yep, D.
Okay, a strip shopping center is a type of commercial land use wherein the stores share a common parking lot. Shopping center is often located in a major intersection and general contain stores like what?
I would say all of the above.
All the above, that is correct. A joist is a lumber beam where used horizontally to support floor and ceiling systems. Aside from lumber or wood, joists can also be made from what?
A. D.
Yeah,
D.
Andrew, B.
All of them.
All of them. So are you looking at this? These are the joists.
Yep.
They are designed to take load. They want to have a window here. You can't have load. You can't have weight pushing on the window, right? So this is a joist designed to transfer the weight down to these holes next to it, right? And there's strict calculations on how thick and strong that has to be based on the span you're trying to do. A kiosk is synonymous with what? Kiosk.
I would say all of the above.
E.
Yeah, all of the above.
Where do I find the recordings? Okay, hold on. YouTube. Oh wait, what is it? And AW. So I just put in the chat, if you go to youtube.com, type in KW Sec Metro, you will find our channel, click on it, and there, go to playlist, one of them will be test prep, and you'll see the recordings.
Perfect. That's what I will be doing for the next week.
Okay.
Again, for the next week. I rewatched a lot of the classes too. So
yeah,
I got to play
yeah.
So
that's good. The suitability of the site for a percolation area has to be considered to determine the suitability for a location of what?
Percolation area.
B.
When we talk percolation area, we're talking about septic tanks. Yep. You know how a septic tank works, everyone?
Yeah, percolation test. Yeah, it's a perk test.
A perk test. So your waste goes to a tank, and it comes in the top, and there's solution in there designed to make it filter down to the bottom. And on the other side, there's another tube that goes out where all the supposedly semi-clean water comes out, and it goes into the ground, and they do a site and they put it into the ground in a certain area. That area has to have a perk test or a percolation test because they want to make sure it doesn't build up and create a cesspool. So they want to make sure it percolates down into the water table, right? So we did that perk test. A blank can simply be defined as a plan illustrating the structure foundation configuration.
C, foundation plan.
Correct. Good job with the foundation. Drywall is a construction body used primarily to cover building
interiors. B.
Interiors. Good. Under the nail size, penny size refers to a standard.
C.
Nail unit, correct. When they do nail units, they do it by penny size. They think it was because nails used to be sold by the penny. The bigger the nail, the more penny. BTU. What does BTU stand for? We use that on measuring HVAC units. You say, what's the BTU? What are we talking about?
I would say A, British thermal unit.
It's corrected as the British thermal unit, BTU. It's the international measurement of energy that we use. So a BTU is the amount of heat required to raise 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit. BTU. So. A soil pipe is a pipe that carries off waste from a plumbing fixture. The soil pipe ultimately drains to a
B.
No, C, creek. No, certainly.
Hopefully not.
That would really decrease the value of the property.
It might be a.
It might be.
Yeah, I won't finish the sentence.
A destructive pest of wood. Blank termites feed on wood that is not connected to the soil.
Oh gosh, wood that is not connected. I would say A, subterranean.
No, it's deep dry wood. So you got to know your termites, which is funny to say. No, this is not a pest test. There are subterranean termites, which live like ants. They live under the ground and they come up and eat the wood. Generally, that's why you build houses now where you see the foundation and then you see the start of the house actually is like 4 inches above the ground, right? They do that because of subterranean termites, right? If you don't put wood on the ground, the termites are not attracted to it, right? They want easy access. The subterranean termites do not like light, so they'll tend to build mud tubes. So you'll see, if you see little tubes of mud or dirt stuck and like weird lines going up, guess what? You got termites. The good news is you can just spray them, they inject chemicals into the ground and it kills them when they go home. Dry wood, unfortunately, they're the flyers. There's the guys you see in India where they have the big old tubes and they're flying out all over the place and swarming. Those are dry wood termites. They fly on wood and they bore into it and live in the wood. Very hard to get out. Very hard to get out. The only way you can get them out is what? You tent the property. Because they're so far in the wood. And so those are true. There is Formosan termites, but they're not in our area. We primarily have subterranean and dry wood in the California area. A blank apartment is an apartment building without an elevator.
Walk up.
Walk up. There you go. Insulation works as a barrier for heat and loss and heat gain. In a typical home, the most important areas to be properly insulated are what?
B. D.
D. Yes, all the above. Correct. Okay. Blank is a thin sheet of metal used particularly at the joists and angles of the roof to direct the flow of water. These are very important.
Oh, flashing.
D. Flashing.
Yes, flashing. Very important. A shallow space beneath the upper and lower story of a building designed to gain access to wires and pipes is referred to as what?
Crawl space, A.
Correct, Isabella and Kathy. Crawl space. And those are not fun to crawl in. I can tell you that.
Nope.
They are very not fun. For a site analysis to be successful, a plot plan must show the what?
B, transportation accessibility.
D.
You said B? C? It's C.
C, lot improvement.
That's a plot plan. It's got to show you, like, here's the pool. Here's a nice greenery. U.S. Code 15 to whatever states in part. Fee appraiser means a person who is not an employee of appraisal management company. However, a fee appraiser is a state licensed certified appraiser who appraises a fee for performing appraisal. Certified that the appraisal has been prepared in accordance with what? My God, that was a lot. So,
I'm gonna say A, USAP.
No, it's C. The Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. All you have to know is appraiser is supposed to follow this, the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice.
Uniform standards.
Uniform standards.
Yeah. Okay.
The energy efficiency ratio, ER, measures the amount of energy an air conditioner uses. The higher the ER, the number, the blank efficient the unit will be. EER, this is very important in California. More, yes. The higher the ER, more. The state of California keeps upping the energy efficiency of each unit over the years. And so now you must have very efficient units to install to get a permit, right? So, one of the following types of soil is generally suitable for building a foundation on what? Which is a good soil type to build on? Both? It's all saying C. What do you guys think?
C.
Why are they good?
Both A and B. Okay, so there are 5 basic.
There's 5 basic: gravel, sand, silt, clay, organic, which includes soils with high and/or gravel content, are generally suitable for building foundations. Consider they could still be infiltrated by water upon compaction.
Yeah, you don't want it to be too hard.
You don't want it to be too hard.
Yeah.
Because if water can't get through it, then when water sits there, it will sit there and undermine the foundation, right? So you want it to flow still. Even if we pack it down, we're going to pack it down so that it can support the foundation. We want the water still to flow through it so that it doesn't pull the water against the foundation. That will undermine the foundation. So you'll see sand and gravel. I will say here in the Sacramento area, north of Thomas, we have clay because we're We used to be a floodplain. That's why we were good at rice, because it used to flood and rice would grow. Anyways, so it's all clay, but they literally truck in a bunch of sand. And when they build, that's why the houses, when the streets are always leveled up, because they're putting a bunch of sand under there because they can't build it on clay, right? A permanent landmark made by humans used to identify the location of a survey post is called what?
Let's see, artificial monument.
Well, that's B. You're correct. It's B, artificial one. Yeah. Basically, a letter transmittal is a formal introduction of the appraisal report to the client. A cover letter is used to transmit the report to the client. Therefore, a letter transmittal and a cover letter are kind of a
A.
Yeah, just so okay. Oops. Foundation footing is part of a structure's foundation that spreads and transmits the load directly to the soil, which we just talked about. Its requirements are usually implemented by municipal
Building codes.
Building code. Thank you. A beam-like support in a wood frame construction is known as a
B.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. He knows his construction. A header. Right? Header. The initial step in an appraisal process is to what? What do we do? So you're an appraiser.
You're gonna identify the problem, A.
You're gonna identify the problem. What's the problem?
B. I think it isn't a B.
First step,
What is
right? The initial step
What's the first step?
is C.
A.
Analyze.
You guys are all over the place.
You have to know why you're doing the appraisal.
Yes, Kathy, you are right. It's identify the problem. What's the problem?
Like, are they selling it? Are they doing a refi or what?
Oh. What did we learn throughout this process? How many different appraisal types are? So the first part you have to identify is what is the best appraisal process to use for this property? That is the first step.
And for, yeah.
Identify the problem. What are we trying to appraise, right? The business cycle is classified as a successor of 4 stages. These are the 4 stages. What is 4 stages of the business cycle?
Let's see. I would say
B.
I would say B.
Yep.
Just so you know, this is also the real estate cycle. So just know it goes up and down. Don't worry. As part of the truss, planks are the main frame of the roof. You have a truss.
B.
Andrew must have been in construction at some time. Yes. Rafters. So these are the rafters. That's the truss. Truss, rafters. Backfill is the material used to refill the hole. Backfill material could be what?
It could be
D. Both.
B.
both
C.
A and B, C.
Could be all of them. Yeah. Benchmark is a word originated from the chiseled horizontal marks that blank made in stone structures. These marks were usually specified with a chiseled arrow below the horizontal line. Who made these? Who's chiseling a wood? I mean, rocks and
surveyors.
Surveyors, yes, they use these things to determine the height, especially when someone was built on an angle, right? To make sure that conduits are protective tubes in which wires are pulled. Blank, use them in wiring a building.
Electricians.
Electricians, they pull things through conduit. Orientation.
Grab a couple of strips, cut them up, and
What? A couple strips of conduit? Orientation is the positioning of a building in relation to the sun's direction, which can influence the what?
D.
Yeah, I agree. D, all of the above.
I, as a realtor all these years, I still contend this is the most important factor that most buyers don't consider when buying a home. They don't consider. I always hear like My backyard's useless. It gets so hot, right? So yeah, it's important to understand, right? That's why I told my wife I want to either face south because I don't mind if the front of the house is hot. I don't want the backyard to be hot. Right? So, yeah. In construction, the horizontal member of the building subfloor, wherein vertical members are attached, is called the what? Oh, let's see. This says Andrew's knowledge. Used in construction, the horizontal member of a building subfloor.
A.
We have an A. Wall stud?
B.
It's B.
B. Correct. It is B. It is the sole plate. Good job, Andrew.
Okay, sole plate in construction, it's a word. Yep. Okay.
So it's the part that supports the floor. It's called the sole plate. Oh, it is 6:59. You're done 1 minute early. Congratulations, everyone. You have made it through property valuation and financial analysis. Hope if you found that you guys did pretty good on this. Pretty good. I'm impressed. So pretty good. So we are going to wrap it up, but we have financing next week, which is the hardest one. Well, it is on average the lowest section that DRE testers score on average. So we'll do financing, but I know some of you have your who has your test?
Somebody has it tomorrow, I think, and then I have mine on next Thursday.
I have mine on the 18th.
On the 18th?
Mm-hmm.
October 18th. What about you? Leanne, I know you're quick, right?
And mine is on Monday, the 4th.
Wow.
I don't have mines yet.
No. Oh, that's it. Oh, wow. You guys, wow. We're going to have a bunch of graduates. And Leanne, you're like 1 day away, right? Oh, we can't hear you. What?
She's at the baseball game, right?
Yeah, she's at the baseball game.
How's the game? What's the score?
What's the score? You winning? Oh, it's not working. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
No.
I can hear you, Unique, but not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry. All right. No big deal. But anyways, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me on a Thursday evening. And like Andrew said, if you were looking for recordings, KDV Sec Metro, go to YouTube, type in KDV Sec Metro, find our channel, go to the DRE test prep playlist, and you'll see all the recordings. This will be on shortly, likely tomorrow as well. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for spending your time with me. And I will see you next week if you haven't passed your test.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't see you next week.
Exactly. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.